You've both been covering the Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon fire. We know this fire is a monster for lots of different reasons. Patrick, let's start with you. What stories can you just not shake off right now?
I think that our organization has, really made an effort at meeting people in their communities. We spent, a lot of last week up near Mora and the area near there. And I'm just thinking about this woman, Fiona Sinclair. She's lost a lot of her livelihood and is already, looking toward the next threat. She's kind of telling everybody who will listen about, the threat of a massive debris flow with the flood. She feels, I don't know much exactly about what she's saying, the particulars, but her energy is really amazing. She's in these email threads with anybody, journalists, public officials, county commissioners from Mora and the state and federal government. She asked a question of Martin Heinrich, according to her, and she's just sort of, the canary in the coal mine out there. So I just think there's a lot of worry. Everyone's just kind of like looking out over the horizon at every cloud and worrying if that's the one that's going to bring the flood. And so I guess that's just something I hadn't really anticipated going into this, that there would be this cascade of horrors,
Yeah, you guys have been doing great work.
Thanks.
Enjoying Sean Griswold's reporting. Yes. Also. Adria, you are an incredible visual storyteller. And I feel like when I look at the photos you take of people, I feel like I've known them my whole life. I've seen some of your images where people are standing on their lands that have just been burned. Destroyed. What's that like for you to do that, to share that moment with people?
Well, I think it's really important that people see the devastation, and it's, journalism can be extractive in a lot of ways, and particularly in times of crisis, and in the wake of the immediate trauma happening. When you're in those spaces with those people, they're reliving that trauma. There's literally sifting through remnants of their homes. And so it can be really challenging for me to balance when I'm making an image and when I'm just being present and listening. That's always been challenging for me because it can feel invasive sometimes too. And you have to respect that vulnerability that they're willing to give you, that trust, but also doing your job as a reporter and making those images. So it's a balancing act of sorts, and then knowing that they're reliving trauma, and so making room for those emotions that come up is really important.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of doing your job as a reporter, we've been trying to line up interviews with the U.S. Forest Service since early April. And I just want to clarify, this is different from the daily briefings where people, are giving, the firefighters are giving these briefings that are super helpful. But actually like trying to talk with Forest Service officials and ask them questions and have answers. And I'm curious what your experiences have been in terms of transparency from the Forest Service and accessibility to their experts.
They haven't been great. I understand fully that, especially with a forensic type investigation that might be required into the origins of the Hermit's Peak fire or the Calf Canyon fire, that's just going to take some time. And I'm willing to wait for that. But in the meantime, it does seem very much that there are contemporaneous or even documents that they created prior to this that they could be releasing, just to give us a sense of, for the Hermit's Peak fire in particular, what put the crew that day on that mountain. And so that's what a lot of the reporting I've been doing has just been trying to kind of retrace some of those steps with the documents that are available. Luckily, through the National Weather Service or through kind of historical other agencies that kind of done some of the legwork to give us some context. But as you might have read or seen, a group of more residents have sued the federal government to quicken the release of the prescribed burn plan. I did get one document, along with a couple other folks last week, that was created in 2018 that at least outlines some of the broader strategy around prescribed burns in that area. But there was nothing that was produced in the lead up to that burn that would give us any insight about why they determined that it was safe, or who oversaw that, or whether they had a technical or outside review, which was one of the things that was it became a best practice after the Cerro Grande fire in 2000. So I think that there's much more that they could be doing, because in the meantime, there are a ton of just theories abounding about this cause. I mean, I'm sure that Adria has heard a ton of that stuff being out there too. There's just conspiracies upon conspiracies out there, and I think that's just because of the vacuum that the Forest Service is creating. I'll tell you one thing we had to do. The Forest Service announced, or the incident management team announced, that they would be doing daily briefings in Las Vegas at 9 a.m. So I drove from Albuquerque one morning just to ask one question, which was, do you think it's possible, and this was before we knew about the Calf Canyon, but do you think it's possible that the Hermit's Peak fire could have caused the Calf Canyon fire? Just because that was being speculated about, no one really knew about the science or whatever. It seemed like a long shot, but I had a chance to ask the one question, and he answered no, and it's come out since then that in fact that probably wasn't the case. Shortly after that, they stopped doing those daily briefings. I don't know if that's related, but and I understand that those are supposed to be technical about fire behavior and expectations that day. But I think it just kind of shows that it's very that they are trying to limit information in such a way that is actually harmful, I think, while people are actually reacting to the crisis itself.
Yeah, it's been frustrating because, we can be respectful of the investigation, to be sure, and understand that they're very busy. But I feel like there's so many big picture questions that people want answers to, and there's so many experts on the staff who could answer those questions, but it appears as though there's a pretty strict firewall. In terms of accessing the fire, obviously you want to be safe and all of that, but how has that been in your experience?
It's been pretty challenging and a little frustrating. I'd never covered a fire before this, and so kind of learning how to navigate evacuation zones and kind of work around that. You're kind of always on the periphery to tell the story, and so I think we see this incredible imagery that comes from California, where in 1986 it was passed through the legislature that individuals that are journalists can re-enter evacuation zones for coverage, so that they aren't prohibited from re-entering. And so that's why we're able to have these incredible visuals. Okay. And so here, most states, it's all over the board in terms of access. And from speaking to from other photojournalists who have covered other fires in the past, they've found ways around it, either through taking classes or just hanging around long enough where there are crews that they eventually let you on a truck and take you in. I haven't been afforded that luck just yet. And so you will kind of meet a Fish and Wildlife law enforcement officer that's kind of guarding the evacuation zone. And even though the smoke is from miles and miles away, you still can't get any closer. Or when you ask for an escort, I did get one escort in the evacuation zone from the Forest Service. It was me and other media there. You still aren't getting really to fire lines. And I think it depends on the day for them as well, what the fire behavior is looking like, so that you're not in danger. But it's still really prohibitive. And so I'm trying to figure out if there's a way within the state that we could start to lobby for access for journalists in these evacuation zones. Oregon this year passed a law that requires journalists to be escorted, but they can't be given a hard no, basically. So I think that's really important for people to be able to see what is happening from a journalist's perspective. There's lots of photographs floating around on Facebook and online that are incredible photographs, but they're being made by, say, DOT workers or other people that are providing support for the fire. But it's sad to me that a journalist isn't allowed behind those fire lines as well, so that people can see the devastation as it's happening. I think those visuals can really impact people's perceptions, and when you see firsthand what's happening, I think that it really influences people's perceptions and informs them. So I think that's something we have to work on.
Patrick, you've been writing a lot about FEMA and disaster aid. What do you think people need to most understand about that process, what's happening, what happens next?
I think people should understand the limitations, especially those directly affected, but also not take no for an answer. It sounds like there's been sort of this seemingly artificial barrier imposed for 30% of applicants, which is an initial denial based on insufficient records or any number of things. But everybody I've talked to at FEMA just said, well, they can appeal and they have 60 days to do that. And it sounds like, at least on the phone when I talk to FEMA folks, they say, we're happy to work with people as much as is needed. This is an automated letter. I think that the existence of this automated denial process has come under question, and maybe because it does demoralize folks from applying. But I think that if there's anybody watching this who has gotten a denial from FEMA, I think that FEMA would like you to know that that's not really a denial, and you should just keep asking and visit the Disaster Recovery Center or call them up. But I think, as we're all kind of waiting to see what will happen federally or with any of these pending lawsuits, this is just not nearly enough money to fully compensate people for their losses, and it's going to take an act of Congress and maybe more to meet, at least in terms of like financial compensation, that which was provided in 2000 after the Cerro Grande fire.
What do you think needs to happen in terms of healing for communities or northern New Mexico?
Gosh, I don't know where to even start, really. These people have been a lot of them have been on their land for generations. And their land burning it's not replaceable to them. And so for them to heal it's going to take a lot of time, I think. I think it's a wound that won't heal for quite a while, just because it impacts their family's legacy. They have this connection to the land that I don't think many understand. And the grief that's impacting them, I think, is really immense. Mm-hmm. Plus these other barriers, perhaps, to assistance. So I think it's just going to take a lot of time, and hopefully the agencies that are in place do come through and are able to support. But on a grief level, I couldn't imagine how you even start to heal other than time and coming together as community for them. And I think part of that healing is sharing their stories too, and continuing and following up to see where they're at and see what happens to them.